Welcome, everyone, to episode 45 of the RDH Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Chad. Joined alongside is my brother, Tanner. How's it hanging, dude?
It's going well. It's going pretty well. I'm enjoying this basketball season we got going on. I'm enjoying all the new sports that I'm getting into. I'm enjoying. Well, I guess I'm not enjoying football being gone, but that is a thing that has happened, and yeah, I'm doing well.
There you go. There you go. Well, on deck today, folks, we got 8 NCAA offensive lineman prospect profiles. We're rating some upcoming quarterback NFL free agents. And lastly, we got a surprise for you. Like Tanner said, he just alluded to, big basketball guy. He's a basketball guy of the podcast, big Wimby fan, big Spurs fan. But we got a new segment this week, and we're going to be rolling it out, and it's called Tanner's Corner 3. And we're going to dive into this. That new segment's going to be right after the NFL draft talk that I'm going to jump into right now. But Tanner, are you excited for some draft talk, some free agent talk in your new segment this week?
It's a good time of the year, Chad. I'm ready.
There we go. There we go. All right. Well, this first part of the episode is going to be me going through some offensive lineman prospects for the upcoming NFL draft. These are going to be my rated prospects. These are going to be all of the offensive linemen I'm watching. So I got 8 guys here. If you have any requests for any upcoming prospects in the NFL draft, we're taking those. And we already have done a friend request. So without further ado, offensive line prospects. Here we go. We got number 1, Joe Alt, the offensive tackle out of Notre Dame. Classification is a junior. Draft grade is an early first round. Draft projection is an early first round. I think with pretty much every confident bone in my body, I'm going to say that this guy's going top 5, if not top 10 for sure. I think he's going to be the first tackle taken in this year's class, but another year, another Notre Dame offensive lineman rated at the top of this class. It just seems like this happens every year. He's a day one left tackle, took all of his snaps in college at this position, and this is exactly the blindside blocker you want protecting your franchise quarterback. Not even 5 sacks given up by Alt throughout his entire time at college, and he's a pass blocking left tackle in my eyes and is getting better and better in the run game. And I see him being in the NFL for a long time. Honestly, I think this guy is the best tackle, the best offensive line prospect in this class. I think he is the best pass blocking prospect in this class. And like I say, he's getting better and better in the run game, but he's already up there in the run game. So this is the number 1 overall tackle in this year's class. Jumping to the second tackle, and I apologize, I'm going to mispronounce the heck out of his name. Olamwanu Fashanu. He's an offensive tackle out of Penn State. He's a junior. Draft grade is also going to be an early first round. Draft projection is also going to be an early first round for me. So this player has played 24 college games since 2021, and no sacks have been allowed against him. That's right. But he did add 10 quarterback hurries this season, so those could have easily turned into sacks. So you want to see that go down a little bit, but still not bad at all. And he's a great pass blocking left tackle at the next level. And I could easily see him walking in and being a day one starter. When you're getting taken that early in the first round, usually you are a day one starter. I have Fashu ranked below Joe Alt in this year's class. However, if Fashu continues progressing at pass blocking and run blocking at the rate that he did this year, that could look different in a couple years. But still, Alt is going to be my number 1 rated tackle in this year's class. Now jumping to the third offensive lineman we have. This is another tackle, Talis Fuagu. He's from Oregon State. That's right, my Beavers. He's a junior. Draft grade is a mid first round grade for me. Draft projection is going to be mid first round. I don't see this player falling in to the late first round, and I could see him being the number 2 tackle taken, but most likely the number 3 tackle taken. One of the main reasons I was a big Oregon State fan this season. This is it right here. This player. He's a massive offensive lineman, and his size completely jumps off the tape when you're watching it. One of the best, if not the best, run blocking tackles in this year's class. He almost looks like a guard, but he's a tackle. And his run blocking is incredible if you watch him for Oregon State this year. Powerful, vicious hand movements from this player. And if you run an outside zone scheme, get ready for pancakes from this guy in the front. He reminds me a lot of Lyle Collins from the Dallas Cowboys and from the Bengals. He has that offensive tackle. It's really his true position. Lyle Collins played a little bit of guard, but I could see him having that flexibility position wise. But we'll see. It's going to take a lot of NFL coaching, and it depends on what scheme he goes to. And if you're a tackle, you get taken a lot higher than guards usually. So the next tackle in this draft, it wouldn't be an offensive tackle class if it wasn't an Alabama in there, right? J.C. Latham, offensive tackle out of Alabama, like I just said, classification is a junior. Draft grade is a mid to late first round. Draft projection for me is also going to be a mid to late first round. Latham played most of college ball at the right tackle position, but in 2021, I did see him play a little bit of right guard there. Position flexibility there, but definitely project this massive lineman as a tackle at the next level with the ability to step into the guard in a pinch. Latham only gave up a couple sacks this season, which is impressive to say the least because he played in the SEC. Jumping to another SEC tackle, we're going to Georgia. Aramis Mims, he's a junior. Draft grade for me is going to be a late first round. Draft projection is going to be a mid to late first round. So if you remember the tackle that got injured in the SEC championship game, this was him, unfortunately. But I'm still projecting this lineman is a mid to late first round pick, even with the injury. He's an explosive blocker. He's a mauler. The biggest player I've watched on tape so far, he's 6'7", 340 pounds. That's a massive human. And just wait till you see his footwork. Extremely impressive for his size. And it's another Georgia player that's going to be taken in the first round. Another Georgia Bulldog going. And the next offensive tackle we got is Jordan Morgan. He's from Arizona. He's a senior. Draft grade is going to be a late first round. Draft projection is going to be a late first round to early second round. This is the sixth tackle. You typically see 5-6 tackles go in the first round, but I could see this player kind of jump into the second. His 2021 season was not the best, I'll say that. But 2022 and 2023 were some of the best in college football, and that's why this player jumped up the board so high this year. He's a true pass blocking left tackle and played all his snaps at that position in college. Progression is key for an offensive lineman, and Morgan's progression is some of the best in this year's class. Like I said, in 2021, not a great season, but 2022 and 2023, he came back for vengeance. I can see him sneaking into the end of the first round, but we'll see. This is going to be a player that could be sitting there on day 2, and a lot of NFL GMs could be licking their chops. Another offensive tackle, and then I'm going to end it out with a center. That's right. Troy Fontu, the offensive tackle out of Washington, junior. Draft grade is an early to mid second round. Draft projection is going to be mid to late second round. During his sophomore season is when Fontu became an every down starter and has not looked back since. This pass blocking offensive tackle only gave up 2 sacks in the 2 previous seasons that he played, and he averages about one quarterback, and he averaged about one quarterback pressure. So a little bit of advanced stats there for you, but Fontu is a really exciting prospect, and one of the reasons that Michael Penix Jr. wasn't getting hit so much this season was because of this player on the outside. The highest overall rated center on my board in this year's class, and it's not even close, Jackson Powers Johnson, the center out of Oregon. Classification is a junior. Draft grade is a mid to late second round for me. Draft projection, this is the hardest one because he, like I said, is the highest rated center in this class for me, and realistically the only center that has a chance to go in the first 2 rounds. I don't think he slips into the first round, but I could easily see him getting taken in the late second or early second because, like I said, he is the highest graded center, and if you're a team that needs a center, you're gonna jump up to get this guy. But he's the best center in this upcoming class. It's not even close. He's given up 0 sacks and 3 quarterback hurries in his 3 seasons in college. 2 of those seasons, he was a full-time starter. So that one season, he wasn't a full-time starter, but still, this is a great center. And the versatility of this player is going to get him drafted even higher than anticipated because he also played right guard in 2022. So not only do you have the top-rated center in this year's class with position versatility, but he also played guard at an elite level in 2022. So this is an exciting prospect. Tanner, I just went on about these offensive tackle prospects. What do you got for me? What are you thinking about these guys? I know you're hearing a lot of first and second round talent. I know you're pretty excited.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna be a Debbie Downer a little bit on it too. You gotta shout out some of the offensive linemen that we've seen in the past. Just because they're good on tape doesn't mean they will be good in the NFL. It's a lot very hard to transition for a lot of those guys. You can say that about any guy in the NFL, really. But I think specifically with linemen, you see it a lot more. Maybe the only other position that you would see it even more would be like maybe quarterback, because like we've said before, it's kind of the hardest position to evaluate. But this is one of those picks where if you nail it, you nail it for 10, 12, 13 years. You know what I mean? Like you nail this thing, and you're sitting pretty for a long, long time. But I don't know, man. They're all pretty talented. I don't really have anything specific on each one of them. I don't really watch offensive linemen. That's kind of your job. But I watch the skill players, and I'm like, yeah, that guy's pretty good. But no, I mean, the first round prospects, you're gonna have a couple diamonds. You're gonna have a couple rough ones in there too, because it's just the nature of the draft.
Well, that's exactly what happens, right? And like Tanner mentioned, I'm the football draft guy on this podcast. If you haven't been listening, but yeah, I mean, you have 5 potential offensive linemen that could go in the first round, maybe 6, depending on your board. Depending on those NFL GM boards, you could have maybe even 6 offensive linemen going in the first round. But realistically, I see 5 going, and I see a couple of those prospects going in the top 10, and then the other 3 prospects really scattered throughout the rest of the first round, and maybe even falling to the second round. But the draft just gets me so excited because, first of all, it's best time of the year. And second of all, you have all of these incredible guys, right? All of these incredible guys that are so talented, and only, 32 of these guys can go in the first round, right? So you're going to have teams, you're going to have guys that should have gone in the first round that are falling into the second round. And you've got NFL GMs scrambling, you know what I mean, after the day of the draft, because you've seen that, right? You've seen players, you saw Lamar Jackson almost fall out of the first round, right? You don't think they would have had a couple phone calls, going there if you're sitting there at the top of the draft. So, it's exciting times. We're going to keep hitting these prospects every week. Next week, we're going to hit some tight ends, maybe jump in a little bit more wide receivers in there too. But I can tell you right now that this offensive lineman class is very good, very solid. When you have 5 offensive linemen that have a first round grade on the board, that's a stacked offensive lineman class, and I'm excited to see it. But what's interesting, and the last thing I wanted to point out before we jump on to the next segment, which is your segment, um, you notice how there was no guards in there? Like, isn't that a little weird? You see these guards, you see Zach Martin, you see Quentin Nelson, you see these guys going in the top 15, right? You see these guys going in the top, but I don't have any in the first round this year, which is crazy to me. I don't have any halfbacks in the first round. I don't have any offensive guards in the first round. I don't have any centers in the first round. I have 1 tight end in the first round, and the rest are wide receivers and quarterbacks in terms of offensive players. So it's like this class isn't necessarily loaded, but it's loaded in specific positions.
Hmm.
And it's loaded in specific positions in specific rounds of the draft. Like last podcast, we talked about the halfbacks. The sweet spot for the halfbacks in this year's class, 3rd and 4th round. That is absolutely gold. Wide receivers in this class, actually, probably rounds 1 and 2, and maybe even going into the 3rd round. Offensive linemen, round 1. Because if you drop out of round 1, there's going to be a massive gap from round 2 and round 3 with those offensive linemen. Tight end, I said it. There's one guy. There's one guy that's going to go in the first round, and that's it. And he played for Georgia. And I'm going to give his scouting profile next week. I'm not going to give anything else away from him. And then you have the quarterbacks, like I said. So I think this draft is going to be really interesting. And I think that this is a draft that you could potentially see 3 of the same position or 2 of the same position go 1 and 2. Then you see, so let me rephrase this. I see 2 quarterbacks going. Pick 1, pick 2. That's typically what happens usually like every draft, unless there's an offensive lineman or there's just not a number 1 quarterback in the upcoming draft, right? Not a true rated number 1 quarterback. We all know who my number 1 rated quarterback is, and we know most experts number 2 rated quarterback, right? Caleb Williams being number 1 and Drake May being number 2. So I see those guys being right there at number 1 and 2. Then number 3, there's no way Marvin Harrison Jr. doesn't get taken, right? And then maybe you jump in Joe Alt, but then we haven't even hit on the defense yet, right? This is only the offense. And then you look at the actual players, the actual teams that are sitting there in the first round or in top 5 picks, and you look at how many of them have new coaches. New England Patriots. What are the Patriots going to do? You know what I mean? The Patriots had Belichick for a decade. You know what I mean? They're going to take some kid out of Illinois or Maine, no matter where it is, and he's going to become a Pro Bowler. But now Belichick's not there. So what are they going to do with the third overall pick? Or, it's just there's so many what ifs, and we're going to be hitting all those what ifs on the upcoming episodes. But right now, we're just giving you a ton of these prospects so you can learn a lot about these guys. Give us a follow on our Instagram channel at rdh.sports. Our TikTok is at rdh.sports. We're also on Facebook. And, hey, if you're watching us on YouTube, welcome. Tanner, here we go. Tanner's Corner 3. Your turn. Let's go.
Let's go. It's a new segment, everyone. I also want, before we get into this, I want to give Chad a little props. He puts a lot of work into these draft prospects, and like he said, you can go to our Instagram profile, our YouTube profile, and you can find all of these scouting reports, everything at the click of a button. Just click on it, and they're all in the reels, and you can figure out which one you want to listen to and comment under, and put a like and maybe put it on your story too. But on to the corner 3. This is a new segment, and it's going to be led by me, and hopefully it's going to be every week. And every week we're going to see what it's going to be, but it might be different. It's just pretty much an NBA segment because, NBA's in the All-Star break, and now we're kind of getting into like the meat and the potatoes of the season, the games that really matter. So I think it's fun. I'm going to bring like a new topic each week, maybe one or two, and Chad and I can discuss it, or we're going to have like a game or something like that him and I play, like a ranking, something like that. Just something to have to do with the NBA, shake things up a little bit. And this week, I have brought something that I thought was pretty interesting. I've been watching them throughout the season. I've been watching them get better, go down, and go up. The Indiana Pacers. These guys, I think, it's a good way to start this off. I have one of two teams I want to talk about today, and this is one of them. And I think that their season so far is actually really interesting if you go in and look at the stats. If you know me, I'm a stats guy. I do love stats. It's not everything, but I do like to point out a lot of things that I see, just going over. But with Indiana, the Pacers, they are a bottom 3 team in terms of opponents' points against, with 122.3 points against their team. So I think that's 28th in the league. The only ones above them is Atlanta and Washington. And Atlanta is a bubble team. They're almost on. I think they're like the 10 seed right now. And Indiana's a playoff team currently. And they're currently the 6th seed. It's a tight race, but it's really interesting to me because I don't know how often you have a playoff team that is simultaneous, and this one's going to surprise you, simultaneously bottom 3 in points against and number 1 in points for. So their offense is amazing, the best in the league in terms of points scored, whereas their defense is a bottom 3 defense in the league in terms of points scored. And it's really interesting because you got, Halliburton, he's an all-star this year, and he's been playing really, really well, and you just kind of don't expect that from those guys. I think Indiana, they've been like a mediocre team for a couple seasons now. The last time they made the playoffs was in 2019/2020 in that season, and they lost in the first round. And a couple times before that they lost in the first round too. So it's interesting, but this team I think is a very, very good team. I think that they are massively underrated. They've had some ups and downs this season, but I think I just wanted to bring to light that those stats. I think it's really interesting because I didn't think that their defense was that bad. Watch them play. I've seen them play very well, and so it was kind of surprising to me.
Well, that's so interesting because, like you said, I wonder when that's ever happened, when you've had that good of an offensive team and then you don't have a good defensive team at all. But I mean, it makes you think, right? Because and this is so bad that I'm comparing the Indiana Pacers to the Chicago Bulls when they had Michael Jordan. But when you have a Chicago Bulls team like Michael Jordan, but then you have Dennis Rodman, right? Like you're going to lead in offense and defense because you got Dennis Rodman. You know what I mean? And Indiana Pacers, they have size. What? That's like saying the day's not light, right? Like every NBA team on this planet has size. You know what I mean? But it's like the Indiana Pacers, to me, not only seem like a good defensive team, like that's kind of what they've been for a while. And back when I used to watch basketball, like all the time and consistently, it's like you had Jermaine O'Neal. You know what I mean? And that necessarily wasn't a defensive guy. He was more of an offensive guy. But then you had Miles Turner, and that was a big defensive guy.
Yeah,
and now it's just
Miles Turner,
it's all offense.
He's still on the team. He's still
Oh hell yeah,
he's still
Go
there. But it's just like I don't know. It's really interesting too. I think their roster's pretty good. Like I said, they got Miles Turner, and they got Pascal. I'm not even gonna pronounce his last name.
Siakam
Yeah, Siakam.
nailed it. Give me that.
And then they actually traded for a guy from the Spurs, and I actually really liked him, Doug McDermott.
Oh,
He's a two-way.
Nick Buckets.
he's
Oh,
he's
I know Dougie.
he's pretty good. And I like that roster a lot. I think they got better. And I think they're going to continue to get better through this break. And I think Halliburton, I think he'll be fine. I think he'll lead this team pretty well into the playoffs. But the question is, what do they do in the playoffs? Because like I said, they've had some playoff troubles. They haven't been very good in the playoffs. And like what changes that? You know what I mean? So I thought it was interesting. But I think you got to give a lot of credit to their offense because they just have been doing this, the entire season. You have, absolutely explosive teams out there like Milwaukee who can put up a stinker or they can put up, one of the best performances of all time, with Boston, the Nuggets, and, the 76ers when Embiid was healthy. But I think it's really interesting. Go watch some Pacers basketball. They're a historic franchise, and I think they're going to be doing pretty well in the playoffs this year. They're kind of like my dark horse. I think I got a good feeling about them, but they got to continue to do well because the season's not over, and people are going to be coming for that 6th seed. They're going to be coming for that 6th seed.
Oh, definitely. And the only question I have, and it's just kind of a general question, is like, I wonder what happens if the Pacers don't continue the offensive just onslaught that they've done, right? Because it's like if their offense slips up
They
at
lose.
all, exactly, you said it, they're going to lose, right? And so it's like you're only playing, not necessarily only playing good teams in the playoffs, because like a lot of teams do get in there in the first round, But I think if they get past the first round and they continue to get better defensively and then keep hooping offensively, then maybe they can make a bit of a run. Like you said, it's your dark horse team. I'm not the basketball guy here, but I'm liking I'm liking the soup that you made. I'm with it. I'm making all the letters out of the soup you made. So, I'm with it. Let's go. Let's go Indiana. Who's on next for you?
I had to put them in the first segment, babe. It's the Spurs, baby. It is the Spurs. They are the second team I want to talk about, and I thought it was really interesting. Last time I talked about them, the night after we recorded our podcast, Wemby went and destroyed Toronto and put up a triple-double, and it was one of the most impressive performances I've seen in a while from a rookie. And just wanted to I just wanted to shout out and say that the Spurs, they're playing pretty well right now. But, and I will pull up the specific stat, but while I'm doing that, I will explain that the Spurs, for the first time in potentially NBA history, they could have the worst record they've had of all time. Of all time. Nice. But it's fine because however many games are left, I think it's like 27 games. From what I calculated it, I think they have 11 wins right now, and the mark they need to hit is like 22 or something like that, 21 or 22. And with about a third of the games left, they've had maybe about like a fifth. So like maybe like a 20% chance of winning every game. That's like, that's the record. So unless they step it up, they're going to be posting a franchise low. Let me say that. Not a good record, a franchise low in wins for the season. And I mean, that's cool, I guess. They probably won't even still get the number 1 overall pick again because, there's other teams like Washington out there that are pretty bad as well, but along with Detroit too. But it's just kind of crazy to me to think, I've been a Spurs fan for a long time and I've never seen them have this little success with, honestly, I'd say a pretty good team, but they're very young. They're very good. But they just can't really put it all together, especially on defense. But I thought it was interesting to bring up. I think Wembanyama, he is the answer, but the team needs more. And, I'll tease it a little bit, but I want to get into the future, potentially, some prospects that I think could be really good for the Spurs, especially since they will have a really high pick. And along with, Detroit, Washington in there as well. I think that these teams are going to get a lot better. There's no like super historic prospect like Wemby in this year's draft, but there's still a lot of really good guys. And I think the Spurs can rebuild and continue to do what they're doing. But yeah, I just wanted to shout them out. Just wanted to put them on the radar, put you on the radar for that because NBA history could be made this season, and probably not in a good way. But I thought it was
Sorry,
fun.
Spurs Nation.
Yeah, yeah, and I think with the All-Star break, it's kind of fun to break down the scenarios for the rest of the season, and hopefully we'll be doing more of these. But you never know. The Pacers, they've looked really good. They could fall off. The Spurs, they could make never. They can't make anything. They can't do anything. They're done for the season. But you know what? It's okay. They're going to continue playing, and yeah, that's pretty much the corner three. Other weeks it's going to be different. It's going to be games that Chad and I do, and maybe rankings and stuff like that. We'll have some fun with it. But if you have any ideas, just shout it out to us. Who's your favorite pick for this, for this playoff matchup, or like who are you picking like here? It's like, what do give us some suggestions too, so we can go over it. I think it'd be fun. But pretty much, I'm gonna try and bring a couple things per week and just see what you got.
There we go. There we go. And I'm going to be the one that's going to ask in a couple questions because I'm the stupid guy when it comes to basketball. And we are RDH Sports. We don't only talk football. We usually talk like exclusively football, but we like to throw in a little bit of sports there, and we do that like Tanner was saying in the off season because football is officially over. New each week we're going to come with new games. If you've been listening to us, we haven't had a podcast in the offseason yet. This is the first time we've had a podcast in the offseason, technically. So we're going to keep going with these prospect profiles and everything for the upcoming NFL draft. And Tanner, like he said, he's going to look at a couple guys, maybe the tippy top of the prospect pool and kind of give his little breakdown on him, because the biggest thing for me is the NBA is so much different than the NFL, right? You have a guy, and I'm not saying that it's never happened in the NBA. I know, of course, it has. I know you've had undrafted guys that have gone on to have great careers. I know you've had guys drafted in the second round that have gone on to have great careers, JJ Redick. But like you have so many less roster positions in the NBA than you do in the NFL, and you have so many people less, like, just overall less in the team, and there's just such a different way to get into the NBA draft.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, I think that that's just so fascinating because you have a player like Luka Doncic that comes over who's playing professional already, but just in another country, right? Then you have the G League, right? And then you have actual college ball. So there's literally three different avenues for you to be able to go into the NBA draft, and you can be a kid in all three of these, which is absolutely
Mm-hmm.
insane to me. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, if you go to college, you got to pass high school and get into college, but still, like the G League, don't got to do that. You know what I mean? Luca was playing, like I said, overseas before he came over, and you saw how easy that transition was. So, you know, Wembanyama, kind of the same, right? Whenever he came over from already playing professional in France, it's like he was like, oh, the NBA is easy. Of course, he's, I don't know how true that is, but he's a rookie and he's getting triple doubles and he's making Shaq look small on TNT. So he's
Yeah,
an
true.
exciting prospect, and I can't wait to keep seeing him progress, because here's the thing that you said about the Spurs. This is first season. This is first season. This is the rock bottom. This is the potential worst the Spurs are going to be ever. And guess what? They got Wemby. They still got Pop, and they're going to be getting high draft picks. And you can't tell me there's not one free agent out there that can also make a solid impact. And you just have Popovich, who knows how to evaluate talent and get these guys to go. So I'm excited too. As a Lakers fan, it's kind of the opposite. The Spurs are really young, up and coming. The Lakers kind of not necessarily are old, but a key guy on the team. LeBron James. He's a little bit on the older side. So it's like, what happens when he's gone? Then the Lakers go to just Anthony Davis. It's just there's so many what ifs right now in terms of the offseason. But
Yeah.
that was it for the for the NBA talk for this episode. I love it, Tanner. We're going to definitely keep doing some NBA talk. I need to know a little bit more about NBA. Now we're going to jump into the last segment. We're talking upcoming free agents in the NFL, and we're just talking quarterbacks today. If we talked all the free agents, well, Tanner and I did that one time, and we were here for about 3 hours. So we're not going to do that. We're just going to do quarterbacks. We're going to break it up each week, kind of like we do the first segment with the prospect profile. So this week, like I said, quarterbacks. And Tanner, I mean, come on, you know what I mean? I gotta shout you out, right? Gotta shout you out. Gotta call your guy, Baker Mayfield. What's gonna happen with old Shake and Bake? He's a UFA. You know, you think he signs? I mean, there's no way the Bucks let him go, right? There's no way.
No, I mean they made the divisional round of the playoffs, right? They beat a not hot, a very cold Philadelphia Eagles team, but they still won and they still made it to that round. And I'd say they were still pretty decently competitive in that game against Detroit in the playoffs this year.
For sure.
But no, they turned around a team that had just lost Tom Brady, the greatest quarterback of all time, and Baker stepped in and he looked pretty good. I think he played pretty well. I think he started to win over the fan base towards the end of that, and he made a playoff run. Then that's all you can really ask. Like, just get to the playoffs, see what happens. Maybe some miracles will happen, but absolutely he should be re-signed. I think that he's been doing this his entire career. He's just one of those guys. He's going to go out there and win. He did it with Cleveland. He did it when he had his shot in LA for that random game. You know what I mean? He comes on the field, game-winning drive. He's doing it here in Tampa Bay. I think he's got a chip on his shoulder. That's why. And I still love Baker. I'm always going to love Baker because he took Cleveland out of the depths. But he's a really good leader. He's a really good person, and he's very good for a locker room. And that's just, he brings all the intangibles that you want as a franchise quarterback. So if he can just stop turning the ball over in some crucial situations, he'd be a franchise quarterback. So I really love the guy. I really love him, and I think he should re-sign. Hopefully he'll continue to get better and better and better and get himself a big old contract.
There you go. I mean, I think you could see realistically, a 2-year contract,
Nothing
like
crazy.
3-year being 3-year being the absolute max. Like I mean, here's the thing. Like Tanner said, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers went into the playoffs and beat a Philadelphia Eagles team that looked horrendous toward the end of the season. But let's be real here. Not a whole lot of people gave them a shot in that game.
Mm-hmm.
We may have picked Tampa in that one because we kind of watch Philly a little bit closer than most people do with being Cowboy fans. But I mean, like Tanner said, you lost the greatest quarterback of all time, and he just steps in and goes like 9-8 and makes the playoffs and beats the Eagles. And in a toss-up up until about the third quarter of the Detroit game, to where it
Mm-hmm.
was like, wait, Tampa Bay's in this.
Yeah, they were
You
in
know
it.
what I mean? And Tampa has a lot of upcoming free agents. Um, you know, a significant one being a former Texas A&M wide receiver that we'll talk about in a future episode. But Baker Mayfield, I think I agree with you on that one. If I'm the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I'm going to bring him back. I'm going to bring him back for 2 years, and I'm going to say, look, if you get us a couple more playoff wins in those 2 years, then you get the bag. But right now, like I just got to see more, and that just sucks because it's been Baker's entire
Mm-hmm.
freaking existence in the NFL. But at the same time, if you're a number one overall pick, which I didn't see coming, he's been doubted his entire time in college, and at Tech and in Oklahoma. He's been doubted everywhere. Every single place he's gone, he's been absolutely doubted, and he's showed everybody what he can do on the field. And he can control what he can control on the field, and he's, I think, absolutely earned himself another contract. So Baker Mayfield, that's one. I mean, I guess we'll go to the I guess less sexy quarterbacks. No disrespect to these guys, but we got the backup quarterback at Baltimore. We got Tyler Huntley. I know last year I was talking about this guy being somebody get him. He's a really good backup to have, but he's literally like Lamar Jackson 2.0. You know what I mean? Like he's just not, obviously he's not at that level. Like let's get real. But Tyler Huntley came in not last season, but the season before last, and actually played really well. Played really well in the absence of Lamar Jackson down the stretch. So much so that every single sports show was talking about who was going to start the next week. Right? That's how good Huntley was toward the end of that last season. Not last season, but the season before last. But then this season happened, and he didn't necessarily play his best whenever Lamar had to go out. So I'm actually not sure if Baltimore's going to bring this guy back, but I really wanted to bring this name up because I know you've seen him play a lot more than I have, because you've watched this division a lot more than I do. So do you think the Ravens bring back Huntley, or do you think the Ravens just say, nah, we'll save a couple million and go, maybe look at a guy in the 5th to 7th round in the draft? Because clearly Lamar's their guy, but that's a very specific mold of a quarterback.
Yeah, I think in my opinion, I think they should bring him back. I think it's just more or less of like a scheme thing rather than anything else, because it's hard to plug and play a quarterback in a in like an option scheme, like kind of like they have. And Lamar's a very unique quarterback, and it's hard to replicate what he does, especially from a quarterback standpoint, where you could be the most unathletic person in the world, but you can rip a football. You're not going to work in that system. Like, it's just not going to happen. And that goes the same for the opposite. If you're like a very a run heavy quarterback, someone who really likes to use his legs and extend plays and do stuff like that, you're probably not going to go to like a pocket passing situation. So I think just the way that he plays, the way that Baltimore's offense works. I think it's a good fit. There's a reason why he was the backup there, and I like him as a backup there. I think he'll continue there, especially if you can sign him for cheap. I don't expect Tyler Huntley to break the bank anywhere, but so I'm expecting him to return and continue to be Lamar's backup. I'm sure they have a great relationship, and I'm sure he knows that scheme very well. So I think it's just one of those things where it's kind of too hard to break it. It's worked in the past, but he's a backup. He's not supposed to go out there and win every game. But he should win, when Lamar's not in, or at least give him a good chance to do so. And if you want to look for other options, I think that's fine. But I don't think you should get rid of him. I think you should bring in another quarterback, maybe practice squad, draft him late rounds, and see what they've got. If you find someone that's really good that can back up Lamar, do that. Until then, keep Huntley.
Yeah, and like you said, Huntley already knows the scheme, and that's a very complicated scheme up there in Baltimore. Going to kind of more of these backup roles, starting first. So we've got Joshua Dobbs here, two Minnesota free agent quarterbacks, which is kind of interesting this year. But Joshua Dobbs, took the NFL by storm and then was on the bench the next couple weeks. Watched him play at the University of Tennessee. Watched him play one of the best college football games I've ever seen in my life against Texas A&M, and loved watching him in college. But in my opinion, I don't think that he did enough. And you sacrificed a draft pick last year to get him. It looked like one of the best one of the best trades of the entire season up until he actually started to play a couple weeks into it. But I like Dobbs. I'm a Dobbs fan. He's bounced around everywhere in the NFL, and there's kind of a reason for that. You know what I mean? He kind of is that backup role, right? So this is a guy that I don't know if it necessarily gives you a chance to win, but I do think he could potentially keep this backup role at Minnesota. But they were going with Nick Mullins, they were going with a ton of other people, in terms of that position. So I don't see Minnesota bringing back Joshua Dobbs, but that is a guy that, if your team is sitting out there in need of a number 2 or number 3 quarterback, this could easily be a guy, and most likely will be a guy that we'll be seeing around the NFL for a while on sidelines.
Yeah, and I think he's just kind of one of those, spur of the moments kind of guys. Like if he's coming off the bench, I think he's a great player. I think he's going to give you a lot of extra energy. If your quarterback goes down and he's coming out there, I think he's going to play pretty well. And I don't think the quality, depending on who he's backing up, will decrease that much. We've seen him in those moments in those early parts of the season when he was coming off, when Kirk Cousins had just gotten injured, and he's there in his first couple of games and he's played pretty well. So it was just over time. He just couldn't consistently do it game in and game out. But I think given the right situation, quarterback goes down, he's got to go finish the game. Yeah, I think he's a good backup. I think he's good for that situation and probably that situation only, but not much more. I don't think he's a franchise quarterback. I don't think you should go and sign him as your number 1, but definitely a number 2, number 3, just to keep in the back pocket, as a little surprise, a little ace in your sleeve.
There you go. Another kind of backup quarterback is Teddy Bridgewater. He, was a starter in this league, but I don't necessarily know if I know there was a teaser of retirement at the end of the season. I'm not sure if that was actually ever confirmed. But Teddy Bridgewater was a guy that, whenever he got drafted in the first round I think Teddy Bridgewater got drafted out of Louisville. I need to go back and look at that to make sure. But he bought his mom a car, and it was this massive, nice Range Rover that he bought. I remember watching that right after the draft. But I mean, he's just seems to be a great guy and been around the league. I'm not sure if he's going to continue to stay in the league because, like I mentioned, I saw that little retirement thing on Twitter a while back, if I'm not mistaken. But Teddy Bridgewater is another guy that could potentially be out there if he does decide to come back to the NFL, and is definitely in more that quarterback 2, 3, echelon. I don't see him starting for, competing for a starting job. What do you got there, Tanner?
Louisville. Yeah, you got it right on the head.
Nailed it.
Can you name
Nailed
the
it.
draft though?
No shot.
No, not even a guess.
No.
2014.
No, the years. I was actually going to say 2013.
Okay, that's
years
pretty
for
good.
me. Yeah, the years for me, I'm so bad at that because I always get the drafts mixed up. I don't
Wait,
know if that makes sense. So,
no,
like, for
it is.
example,
Yeah, it makes sense because they're not the same as the seasons.
yeah, thank you. That to me, I'm like, why? You know, like I'm doing all these prospect profiles. I'm like, yeah, yeah, you know, I don't know which one, but I mean, it's just kind of sucks, you know, when you start to see these guys that got drafted real high and they're, you know, they were young, and you know, then you know, you kind of see them going out of the league. But that's what happens with quarterbacks, and that is a young man's position. Just kidding, not really. Unless you're like, you know, Tom and Drew and Peyton and Aaron Rodgers and some of those guys. But
Yeah, unless you're
that's
good.
yeah, unless you're good. There you go. Good call. Another backup guy that I wanted to bring up, two of them, just kind of real quick. Actually, to be honest with you, kind of three of them, because I really kind of think this player is the exact same in terms of all three of these guys. So you have Gardner Minshew, who's still sitting out there. I feel like he's available every single year. Cleanest look in the offseason, too. That Fu Manchu, are you kidding me? Drew Lock and Sam Darnold. Those were like the three same quarterbacks. You know what I mean? Like those guys are all free agents. Like you got Sam Darnold, you got Drew Lock, who are less than a year apart, and then Gardner Minshew, who's right there as well, all between 26 and 27 years old, all have the ability to kind of sort of get out of the pocket. But Gardner Minshew was the one that had, you know, more starting time than those guys did this year. Actually played some pretty good games in Indianapolis. So out of those three guys, I'm going to give the edge to Gardner Minshew. Personally, for me, I would not get anywhere close to signing Drew Lock, not after what I've seen this season and how that locker room can change. No way. And Sam Darnold, I've gotten burned by him in fantasy too many times to want him on my team if I'm in the NFL. So I think that, you know, that USC quarterback there with Sam Darnold, former top pick. I don't know if that experiment's going to continue to go, but not a bad backup role. But I think Sam Darnold has played himself out of that starting role. Drew Lock, I don't even want to go in. You know, I think we've already spent enough time, or I have at least this season. And then Gardner Minshew, right? So, what do you got on those guys? Do you think any of those guys could potentially re-sign with their teams?
Maybe, I think it depends on the situation. Specifically with Gardner Minshew, though, I think he is kind of one of those guys you do want to keep around. I think I agree with you. He's played well this season. I think he's played pretty well, in the absence of Anthony Richardson, who is the Colts starting quarterback for sure. He will be starting next season given he's healthy, but Gardner Minshew, I think he gave him a great chance to win. They could have made the playoffs at the last week of the NFL. Like the Colts could have made the playoffs and they could have won that division, but cards didn't fall their way, right? And it's just like one of those things. But I like Gardner. I think he continued to be very competitive in those games that he played, and I think he was trying his best. I think he's getting better. I think that since when he's come to the league, when he was on the Jags, he kind of took the league by storm. It was one of those like, oh, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, all right, there we go, it's over. That was fun while it lasted, but he's got the potential to be, a guy who can start in this league. I really do. I think he can be, but there's just a lot of other guys, a lot of younger guys with a lot more talent, unfortunately. I think that he's a good player, though. I think if you're in need of a quarterback, I don't think he's a bad option. I really, really don't. In terms of longevity with a franchise, with a team, probably not. He's probably going to be that 1-year quarterback that you sign when you just don't really know what else to do, and he'll give you, like a 9-8 season, 8-9 season, maybe 7-10 season. But it's not. He's not going to lead you to like the 1 seed probably. So I like him. I like him a lot in a backup role if he'll take something like that. But he's one of those guys who's we talked about Baker. He's one of those guys who's got a chip on his shoulder. He likes to win. He knows how to win, and he goes out there and he just slings that ball. I mean, absolutely slings it. It doesn't matter who he's throwing to either. He's just throwing that thing all over the place. With Sam Darnold, no, I'm not going to touch him with a 10-foot ball. I just don't. He's had too many chances. He like on the Jets, he had 4 years and he didn't do anything with him. He went to the Panthers. He had that season, didn't do anything with it. It was fun for like 4 games, and then he fell right off. And now he's with the Niners, I think, and he got to play in like some of that last season game, and he didn't even look that good. So I really, really don't like him. I think he's like a quarterback 3 at most. He hasn't shown me anything since college, and that's just terrible. And he's been in the league for quite a bit sometimes. So I'm not touching him. And then the other quarterback, who's the other one you talked
Drew
about?
Lock.
Drew Lock. I like Drew Lock. I do. I actually just
Hey,
I I
at
I,
least one Hanks brother likes him.
I kind of like him. I thought that game he played against Philadelphia on Monday Night Football this past season, I thought he played really well. And you know, give all that credit to Pete Carroll if you want. But I think Drew Lock went in there and he played pretty well. He started that game, start to finish, and they won. It wasn't pretty, but they won. And that's not a lot. That's not what a lot of other quarterbacks can say in this league. So I think he's had good moments, especially when he was in the Broncos, but he's had really bad moments too. It's just one of those things. Maybe give him someone who can just mold him into, a good quarterback. I don't know. I think he needs a teacher. He just seems like the exact same quarterback as he was, maybe a little bit more mature coming out of college than when he was coming out of college, but he hasn't seemed to like progressed at all, since he's come out. And, that's not going to work here in the NFL. But if I were to rank him, absolutely. Gardner Minshew 1, Drew Lock 2, and Sam Darnold 3. That's
I
kind of
would
like my hierarchy.
I would definitely agree with those rankings. Another guy that we got to talk about. These are kind of the same quarterbacks, so I kind of kept him over here till the end. You have Tyrod Taylor,
He's still playing.
who's 34 and a half, but
Come
played
on.
pretty decent at the end of the season for New York. And then you
That's
also
really
have
good.
Marcus Mariota, who played for Philly, who's 30. And he was obviously Mariota more of the backup role. Tyrod Taylor, they were going anybody under the sun. Tanner and I, maybe got wrong the Tommy DeVito show. Maybe we got that wrong a little bit. We joined in on the hype. The suit on the sideline with his agent. I mean, how could we not? You know what I mean? I mean, we're a sucker for those kind of things. But Marcus Mariota, you know, the Netflix show Quarterback followed him around, and it was unfortunate that they happened to follow him around that season when he was going like literally losing his starting job that season, and then got traded to Philly. And obviously, if you're going to Philly, you're not starting in front of Jalen Hurts, but he's a really great guy to have in that system. And the great thing about being a quarterback like Marcus Mariota and being a quarterback, like Tyrod Taylor, those quarterbacks are scrambling first quarterbacks, right? So you go to very specific schemes, and there's very specific schemes that can have those quarterbacks. So those guys are always going to have, a little bit of a shelf life in the NFL, a little bit longer, in my opinion. And I know that's crazy to say because they're the ones getting hit, but there's not as many of them as just pure pocket passing quarterbacks coming out of college. So these guys in college were feet first, and in the NFL they've continued to be feet first. So Mariota's sitting there, and Tyrod Taylor's sitting there. It's kind of crazy to me that you said Tyrod Taylor's still playing. Yes, he's almost 35, and Mariota just turned 30. So Mariota, I think, has got a little bit more time, obviously, than Tyrod Taylor does. But I think Tyrod Taylor went in there for the New York Giants this season and actually played a decent amount and played a couple decent games in there when there was not a lot of options to throw to in New York. So I think, I would like to see Tyrod Taylor be a backup somewhere where, maybe he's kind of behind like more of a star. So he could, potentially learn from that star and also be a veteran for that star. Like it's kind of a two-way street with that, a veteran quarterback and a younger star in the game. Um, Last thing I'll say about Marcus Mariota, one of my favorite college players of all time, and literally used him on NCAA 14. And he, like I said, he relied on his legs a little bit too much. He kind of missed the passes that he needed to make, and that's why he's not a starter in the league anymore. But I don't think either of these two players are going to be starters, but I do think that they could get signed by a team. Marcus Mariota, it's going to depend on the draft. Because, like I said, if I could see the Eagles going, fifth to seventh round, because there's a couple guys that come to mind right now that I could think of that they could get, but we'll see what happens. Marcus Mariota, Tyrod Taylor, what are you thinking? Pretty like relative backup roles, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Definite backups, 100% for Mariota. I think it's kind of similar with Darnold. He just hasn't impressed like at all since he's entered the league. I think the coolest thing I ever saw him do was catch a touchdown pass from himself in a playoff game, which was pretty
That
cool.
was cool.
I remember that, and that's probably the only Mariota highlight I will ever remember because he hasn't done anything. I think he's played well occasionally, but it's just not enough. Like he's not.
It's the consistency, right?
It
That's the
is.
hardest part. Out
It
of every prospect profile I go over, I say consistency. That's why.
it's hard, and it's hard to be consistent at this high of a level, and that's
Mhm.
just, he has good moments, but who doesn't at this level, right? So like, it's just not enough to for me to take a chance on him. Really, I've seen so much of him in backup roles and starting roles that he just hasn't had it, whatever it is, But with Tyrod though, I was surprised, very surprised when we took over that starting job and he started playing pretty well. He was just heaving that thing, and it's just like, oh my gosh, the Giants receivers, they can catch balls. That's crazy. They can catch the football, and Tyrod, he's done well. But I actually pulled up his stats too, which I'm a little surprised here. But in just specifically in terms of QB record, the games that he has started this season, he went 2-3. That was not terrible at all with 5 games being started. He played in more than that, but we're going to skew these results a little bit. Back in 2021, when he played with Houston, he started 6 games, and those were the 6 games that he played. He was 2-4, not the worst, not the best, but when he was with the LA Chargers, he started 1 game, and he was 1-0, and that was cool. That's when he was backing up Herbert, and that's when when he got like punctured in the lung or something like that, and that caused Herbert to
Oh my
start.
gosh.
Yeah, that was that.
Yes,
That
I
was
remember
that
that.
at the very beginning of that season, when Herbert was drafted. But before that, he played for Cleveland. He started 3 games. He went 1-1-1. That was the Baker season where everyone was like, Baker was a rookie, let Baker cook. Um,
Mm.
and then before that, he was an actual starter. No offense, but like, he started 14 games the season before that. He went 8-6. Season before that, he went 15 games, 7-8. Season before that, 14 games, 7-6. So he's never been like the guy to lead a team to like a number 1 seed, number 2 seed. But I think he's been competitive. It's not like he doesn't win games. It's not like he's just terrible. I think he still has, a lot of talent, and there's a reason that he's a backup in this league. I think he's probably one of the better backup positions you're going to get if you go out and get a guy like him. And out of all, the quarterbacks out there, he's probably at least, top 3 in, the ones that are available right now, I will say. Well, I mean, we'll say available backups right now, because I think Baker's good. I think a lot of other quarterbacks could, probably succeed over him, but I like him. I think he's a good he's consistent. He doesn't try and do a whole crazy, mountain of things, and he plays pretty well. He's not going to reinvent the wheel when he plays, but he'll give you a shot to win.
Exactly. And then jumping to the last couple guys we got, we just talked about Tyrod Taylor. Mitchell Trubisky came in for Pittsburgh this year and surprised a lot of people. For me, I can't do it. I can't ride. I think if you've listened to the pod, you know that I can't do it with Trubisky. I haven't seen enough, in the NFL that would give me any indication that he would be a starter. He's turning 30 this year, but definitely a potential backup and definitely played pretty decent for Pittsburgh at times. But realistically, which player played better between Kenny Pickett, himself, and the other quarterback that they had on the mix last season, right? Like, it was
Mm-hmm.
just so up and down for Pittsburgh. So it's like, or Mason Rudolph. That's what I was thinking of. I could just remember, I could just remember his face, but I couldn't remember his name. So it's like, realistically, like, did Mitchell Trubisky give you a better chance to win than Mason Rudolph? Did Mitchell Trubisky give you a better chance to win than Kenny Pickett? No. You know what I mean? So for me, I don't really think we need to spend too much time on this one, but maybe a backup for sure somewhere, but not a starter anywhere.
No,
No way.
not even close. I watched some of those games with Mitch, and he just didn't impress at all. Mason Rudolph, he came in after Mitch Trubisky, after Kenny Pickett did get hurt, and I think Rudolph played pretty well in the exact same system. They eventually fired their OC, which was part of the problem. You can blame that as well, but no, he did not play well. He did not play well at all for Pittsburgh. I really don't think that he was the answer. He went 0-2 in games that he did start, and put up 4 touchdowns and 5 interceptions in those games. So, there were other games he played, but specifically 5 total, which 3 more, and adding to that. But regardless, he didn't look good. It wasn't a good showing from him. I can see him probably falling out of the league in a couple years just because he's had a lot of shots, man. He had that starting job with Chicago, and that was the best his career seen. He made the playoffs, and he didn't really do much else. And now he was backing up Josh Allen for a while in Buffalo. Didn't really see him or hear from him, and now he's in Pittsburgh. He got his shot, and he blew it. So not a big fan, but when you get outpaced by Mason Rudolph, maybe it's time to hang up the cleats, bud.
Couple couch warriors right here.
No offense,
we
please.
got three more. We got three more quarterbacks to hit, and I wanted to save these last three till the end. Jacoby Brissett made between like 8 and 9 million last year. Played pretty decent for Washington at times. And this is a guy that's 31. And Jacoby Brissett, you're very familiar with from the Cleveland Browns. Probably one of the best, just speeches that it wasn't his team that I've ever seen. I don't even I gained so much more respect than I already had for him after watching him give that speech, just saying he knows it's not his team, but he gave everything he got. And that is a guy that you want in the locker room. It's just that simple. That's a guy you want in the locker room. That's a guy that every single young quarterback is going to look up to and be like, okay, this guy grinds. You know what I mean? Like, this guy's a grinder. I don't think he's a starter anywhere. But I absolutely think this is a backup veteran that you don't need to necessarily have on your team, but I think a lot of GMs want this guy on their team. What do you think about Jacoby? Because, like I said, you got to watch him in that season with Cleveland every game.
Yeah, I like Jacoby Brissett. I like him a lot. I think he's a really good leader, like you said. I think he's a great locker room guy. But he's just not one of those guys that's going to go out there and win a game for you. If there was a gene that people could have that was like the opposite of a clutch gene, he would have that. He would have like an unclutch gene. Like no offense to him.
You were going somewhere else.
No, I really not. I've seen, when he was with Cleveland, I saw too many opportunities slip by the wayside because of him specifically. To be up at a game and he throw a pick and it's like, we're up by like 10. You don't got to do that, dude. It's just like some of those things. It's just the big mistakes and big moments is kind of the dink I have on him. But he's a backup. You can't be that nitpicky with a backup. And I think among all the backups in the league that are free agents right now, I think he's one of the better ones. I really do. He's got talent. He's able to make, those quick reads, those decisions. But sometimes he just throws it the wrong place. And it's just like, oh, what are you doing? What are we doing? But definitely very prone to make big mistakes. But I think he's still a good quarterback. I think I would still take him over a lot of other guys.
And a backup. Another guy that is, I don't know what's going to happen with this one. And this is why I wanted to save this one until the second to last. We've got Ryan Tannehill.
Oh God.
Who is a UFA who made 29, I think, last year. If I remember correctly, it was like 29 to 30 million what he made last year. Obviously, he's going to get nowhere near that. And obviously, I don't think he's going to be a starter because he could not beat out Malik Willis or Will Levis for Tennessee last year. 5 years ago, he was on fire, right? Mm-hmm. He was a wide receiver coming out of Texas A&M, switched to quarterback, and for some reason played way better at that position than he did wide receiver. Usually you don't ever see somebody make that change that late in their career, and especially at that high of a level, and do it the way he did it, especially at Texas A&M and how he did it in the NFL in the beginning. So this is a guy, in my opinion, that if you can get him at a decent price, and if he is willing to be a backup, mind you, he's almost 30, he's almost 36, that this could be a potential spot for a solid backup veteran. But once again, he got paid almost $30 million in terms of his contract just last year. And no, there's no way any team's going to shell out that. And I really don't think that Tennessee is going to bring him back unless he takes a pretty significant pay cut. But Ryan Tannehill, you think it's about time his time's going to be done in Tennessee finally?
Yeah, I think he's out of Tennessee. The thing is, I've liked Tannehill a lot. I'm a little biased because he did go to A&M, and that it's obviously like a great story. Like you said, switching over from receiver to quarterback. But I think when he was in Miami, the team he got drafted by, I think he played pretty well, with a pretty bad Miami team that they just didn't really have a lot during those seasons. And then he eventually gets traded, or I don't remember if he got signed or if he gets traded, but goes over to Tennessee. And this is kind of like, boom, it finally hits. He's late to the quarterback position, like you said, and he's starting to hit his stride after 5, 6, 7 seasons in the NFL, and that was kind of the story with him for a while. And that Tennessee team was really good. And Mike Vrabel leading them all and just being just a really good leader. And he's starting to hit these passes. He's playing really well. They get to an AFC Championship game with Derrick Henry. Like, the roster's great, and he was doing everything that he needed to do. But I think it's just, the age is starting to get to him. The talent is just not there anymore. He's starting to get that. Not he's starting to get to that point where it's just falling off rather than getting better. So I don't know where he's gonna go. I think I would 100% give him a chance, until he shows that he's just like he just can't do it anymore. But I think he's still got some left in the tank. I think he's still played okay. It's not the worst in the world, but he's had a lot of like success in his individualistic career. He, like I said, he was a starter in Miami for a long time, and he was a starter in Tennessee for a while as well. So he's got a good resume. Like, he really does. It's just he doesn't have the big wins. He's just one of those guys that's been pretty good, but not amazing or stellar in any specific games or categories.
More playoff wins than Dak Prescott. Last,
He does. I think he does.
last quarterback, and I'm pretty sure he's got more playoff wins than this guy too. This is definitely the other starter, in my opinion. I think Baker's the main starter that's going to be out there, that's going to get probably re-signed by Tampa Bay. But this is Captain Kirk. Kirk Cousins
I was waiting for this.
is officially up in Minnesota. So are they going to bring him back? Justin Jefferson and him are pretty tight. Plus, Kirk looks real good in that chain. I'm not sure what they're going to do, but for me, it's really hard to let a guy like Kirk Cousins go when you saw what happened this season, right? Like, you saw how far the Minnesota Vikings kind of fell off without Kirk Cousins, which is crazy to me because as a Dallas Cowboys fan, I was happy that I was bummed that Kirk Cousins was leaving the division when he played for Washington, because he never really, aside from one season, kind of destroyed Dallas, right? Ever. And then he went to Minnesota, and I would say got better, like way better. Is that because of the wide receivers? Is that because of scheme? Is that because of the coaches? There's so many what ifs there, but having the best wide receiver in the entire league with Justin Jefferson probably helps, just a little bit. But what's going to happen with Minnesota, right? Like, there's no way they're just going to let Kirk Cousins walk. They don't have a draft pick where they can solidify their guy. And I also don't think, Justin Jefferson, right? Like, we're talking JJ. We're talking the best wide receiver in the entire league. We're talking a guy that is on Randy Moss level, the guy that has broken all of these records, all of these numbers, broken everything since he's gotten into the league, right? And you want to take away starting quarterback? I don't know if that's going to bode well for him. So my thing is, I definitely think Kirk's going to come back to the Minnesota Vikings. I could be completely wrong, and he could go somewhere else, but I don't know. He's such a good guy for that city. The whole team's behind him. When you watch just this entire season until he got hurt, right? And even when he was hurt, he's still there, right? He's walking around in the booties on the side. Like, this is a guy that you not only want on your team, need on your team. And I don't think he is a backup quarterback yet. I think he is definitely still a starting quarterback. And I absolutely gave Minnesota that division, not knowing how good Jordan Love was, not knowing how good the Detroit Lions were going to be, but gave Minnesota that division because of Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson at the beginning of last season. So if Kirk doesn't get hurt, what happens, right? What happens in that division? There's a whole different dynamic in that division. But Kirk Cousins, Minnesota Vikings, what are you thinking, Tanner? You thinking this is his last payday? You thinking couple years, or are you going to take the approach that they let him go?
I don't know. It's hard if you're Minnesota because, in my opinion, I think Kirk Cousins has given you a really, really good chance to win. I think that they've been really good under Kirk. I think he's played very, very well these past couple seasons. The injury sucks, but he was playing pretty okay up until that point. Like, it wasn't his worst season, but like it's just, in Minnesota, I remember just getting torched in fantasy playoffs by this guy Kirk Cousins right here, and he's just like, oh, this is what I do, and I I think he's been doing it his entire career. I really do. I think he's been putting up these numbers. He's been playing pretty damn well, and people just kind of don't give him any credit. It's just, oh, it's Kirk Cousins. Yeah, it's Kirk Cousins. Whatever. But it's just, I like him. I think that he's cemented himself as a franchise starting quarterback. I think wherever he goes, if he does leave, I think he's going to improve that team. And I think if
For sure.
Minnesota decides to stay with him, I think they're going to, find success. I mean, like it's crazy to me to think about. Like they went 13-4 this previous season. Not this one, obviously, because he got hurt, but the one before. And I think they were like a 1 or a 2 seed. It's like they were 2 seed, definitely. But what what do you mean he's leaving? Like, what do you mean he's afraid? Like, I don't know. It's just, to me, it's kind of crazy. I think out of all the quarterbacks in the market, that's number one, and it's not really close. I think Kirk has a fantastic resume. I think he's led multiple teams to multiple records, and it's just, it's Kirk freaking Cousins, baby. It's Kirk go. Like, I like him a lot. I think he's not done yet. I think, like you said, he's going to get that last big paycheck, and then maybe he's going to hang it up. But I think he's still got some left in him. From what I've seen in these interviews and stuff like that, he still wants to play. He's still got that hunger. He's still got that drive. And how could you not like him? If he's your starting quarterback, he gives you a good chance to win. I think he's got, he's just one of those quarterbacks that we've come to see every weekend, and it sucked to see him go. I really like Kirk, and I think he's gonna continue to play pretty well next year, regardless of what team he's on.
Definitely. And we'll have all the upcoming, free agent signings. We'll recap all that over this offseason and keep throwing new segments at you. Like Tanner was saying, we're going to be playing a lot of games in terms of Tanner's Corner 3 segment, and we're going to be playing a ton of other games too in terms of the NFL. We've got, best team under 25 that's going to be coming up in a couple weeks. We've got best all-time team. Like we've got a ton of stuff to go, and in the offseason it's going to be a lot of fun. We're not going to hit Champions League this episode. We're going to wait till next episode to hit the Champions League so we can wait. We record typically on Mondays. So we're going to wait because we want to wait to see this Champions League, how it kind of plays out this next week. That's pretty much all the sports talk I got. Tanner, you got anything else? Are we good to end this thing?
No, I just think, if you're still listening, just make sure to send in your ideas for whatever you want us to do, because we're in the off season now. We have a pretty like flexible like schedule of what we can do, what we can, if you want us to go over this sport. We watch a lot of sports. Chad's a big UFC guy as well. There's a lot of stuff that we do, and that individually each of us do pretty well. So if you want us to cover a sport, maybe, unless it's like rugby, sorry to all you rugby fans out there, but like it's,
Oh, that's vicious.
I know.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine trying?
I
There's no
couldn't,
way.
dude.
Like, no.
Those dudes, like, they get like their ears
Nope.
will like flare up, and they have like pus
So
like
that
stuck in them. Like that's
so
just
that what that's called cauliflower ear. That's
yeah.
what that is. So a lot of fighters have that as well. So yeah, if you're still listening, like Tanner said, if you ever see a guy with cauliflower ear in the street, run the hell the other way,
Yeah, do
because
not.
that's a guy you don't want to mess with. But yeah, absolutely. We do this show for the fans. So since all of the great comments that you guys have left on all of our posts for these prospect profiles and all these upcoming free agent stuff that we got, we thank you for it. And we're growing way more than I ever thought we would. So any fan request we get in, also, I played hockey for like 20 years, believe it or not. We're gonna hit some hockey this year too. Now that we got Tanner here, Tanner's a huge Dallas Stars fan. My team, the San Jose Sharks, are one of the worst in the league. But I'm a big hockey guy, and the playoffs are coming up, and I cannot wait for the playoffs. We're gonna dive into a ton of that, and like Tanner said, big UFC guy as well. Do a little bit of jujitsu on the side, so can talk a little bit of that stuff. But anything y'all want to hear, rdh.sports on Instagram, rdh.sports on TikTok, and rdhsports.net. Like Tanner said, hit us up and we'll keep doing this thing weekly. Let's end this thing, Tanner.
Oh, bye bye.